a lot really. Scriptures was being changed, or scriptures were being omitted, and it seemed to be changing to fit in with the lifestyle of some modern trends, and they were blessing unions that weren't scriptural at all. We went to another church and it was pretty much the same. There was just no Spirit of God there, and my two sisters and I decided to stop going to those churches, and we started to have little meetings by ourselves and Bible studies by ourselves while we looked for a Bible-based church. But I started to feel that although I loved my sisters and I loved being with them, it wasn't enough just to have our little meetings. I needed more. I needed to have fellowship with other Christians and other people of God. And I just remember just praying so desperately and earnestly that God would send Christian friends into my life, and people of God that I could have fellowship with, and I could pray and I could talk to them about God. Next door to me is a rented accommodation, and it'll come clear in a minute why I mention this. And it was like a house of multiple occupants. There was about loads of people there smoking, drinking, dealing drugs, police always there. And eventually they were evicted and it became an Airbnb. So one night at the end of July, it was midnight and I heard some noise outside, and I looked through my phone at the camera and I saw loads of people outside the house. People always coming and going, and I just didn't really take any notice, but this night it just seemed really different. And they were there for about 10 minutes, and then something said to me, well, I think it was God saying to me, put on your outside light so they can see. And I've never done that before, so I put the light on, and then I was comfortable in bed. It was midnight, and they were there for about 10 minutes, and God said, well, it's great that you put the light on, but go to the window and open the window and speak to them. Well, I was reluctant, and I was too comfortable in bed, really. And I went to the window and opened it, and I said, I've put the light on for you. Are you guys okay? And this voice said, well, turned out to be a guy, David, that Pastor Paul knows. And he says, well, do you know the people that live here? And I said, well, no, I don't. He says, well, we've rented the accommodation and we can't find the key. I don't know what we're going to do. So I said, well, I know where the key is actually. So I told them where it was, and they found it and they went in. The next morning, I didn't think too much about it, and then God was urging me to, he says, well, you've put the light on, you've spoken to them, but now you need to go outside and speak to them. And
Amen.
They were outside, and I went out and I said hi, and then this guy came up to me, and it was David, the guy that I'd spoken to the night before, and he said, we're Koreans, there was 15 of them, and we've come to evangelize. So I started to talk to him and said, well, I've been praying that God would send Christian friends to me that I could fellowship with. And he said, well, God heard your prayers. He said he didn't send one, he sent 15. That morning, they were actually on their way out, they're waiting for their transport to come. So they didn't really have a long time, and and in that time I told him that I'd been praying for God to send fellowship to me, friends to me, and he told me that they were, that evening I think it was, or the next day they were having evangelism in Kingston. And so he told me to come, and then he told me about this church. He said, if you're looking for a Bible-based church, he said, this is the one to come to. And then I met Pastor Paul, so thank you for being so welcoming to me. And then he told me about the conference, the 4-day conference in the city, Make UK Holy Again. it was a lot of information, and when I look back, it really wasn't a lot of time that I had to spend with him. It was about 10 minutes or so, 10-15 minutes or so. And then I just realised that, there just seemed to be a famine in my life, and then all of a sudden I was in a banquet hall and there was a table full of spiritual feasts for me to feast on. And I realised that that night, if I hadn't obeyed God's voice to put on the light, if I hadn't obeyed God's voice to open my window and speak to them, if I hadn't obeyed God's urgings to go and speak to him during that day, I would have missed out on so much. I would have missed out on the doors that were opened, full of opportunities. I would have missed out on God's blessings. I realised that while I was praying here, that God was doing a work in Korea, speaking to those people, and he placed those people right where they needed to be, right next door to me. I'm not even sure how they found this place, because I googled it myself, and
Jesus found it.
thousands came up, thousands of Airbnb came up. I only found it because I put my postcode in it, because it was the same as my postcode, and that's how I found it. So I don't know how they found it there, but I know that God's plan was in everything. I just feel that I came from famine to feasting. I just feel so grateful for God's work in my life. I'm feel grateful that he called me in this way to walk with him, and I just want to know be more obedient to his voice, because I would have missed out on so many blessings. Amen.
Amen.